President Cyril Ramaphosa says he wants to restore relations with the United States, but the conundrum is, how does he pull this off without replacing expelled Ambassador Ebrahim Rasool anytime soon? The tensions of managing the Donald Trump administration and attempting to mend fencing could be further complicated by the Cape Independence Advocacy Group's planned visit to the White House next month. The group, which is led by a British national, intends to amplify its calls for an independent Western Cape. Meanwhile, a fervent government critic and the front-runner for the position of U.S. Ambassador to South Africa, Joel Pollak, has told Newzroom Afrika that the country has to amend its BEE laws if it wants to heal the divide with America. The National Prosecutions Authority is sticking to its guns when it comes to the terrorism case against MK Party MP Duduzile Zuma, despite questions about how her tweets will prove incitement to commit public violence during the 2021 civil unrest. We also take a look at just how much closer the continent is getting to silencing the guns in the Democratic Republic of Congo. I'm Ziyanda Ngcobo, and this is Your Week in Politics.
Both countries, both of them.
President Cyril Ramaphosa intends to engage with his comrades in the ANC about not further fanning the flames of tension between South Africa and the United States. This comes as there are several homecoming rallies planned for the return of Rasool this weekend, including one planned by his party on Sunday at the Cape Town International Airport. Ramaphosa's spokesperson says the president is concerned about possibly adding fuel to the fire.
Be considerate of what he's trying to manage at the moment, and be considerate of what is at stake with respect to the country's economy, with respect to doing our level best to retain that strategic partnership with the United States.
Earlier this week, the president said he'd be awaiting a formal report from Rasool on what's transpired. He sidestepped questions about whether or not he agrees with the remarks made by the expelled ambassador during that webinar and whether it was appropriate to do so on a public platform.
We have noted the displeasure that has been expressed by the United States, particularly about the remarks he made. And we have noted that, and we will engage with them as we are already engaging with them. And engagement with them continues, and it's going to take a variety of forms. It's going to be through envoys, it's going to be through people either from the business community, labor, and a whole number of others also from government.
But one political analyst, Professor Stephen Friedman, says there have been a lot of double standards when discussing the remarks made by Rasool and the implications of his speech.
It wasn't particularly incendiary, it wasn't inflammatory. And I contrast, in the post that I put up, I'm really looking at the double standards in the debate. You will remember that not that long ago, the U.S. ambassador here, without any evidence, accused the government of gun running for the Russians. And I don't remember people using the kind of language towards him that is being used towards Mr. Rasool. So it really creates the impression, that if you're the American ambassador, you can say what you like. If you're our ambassador to America, then different rules apply.
Ramaphosa also denies that the South African government's attempts to engage with the White House have fallen on deaf ears. He would not comment on the unceremonious fashion of the expulsion, which was initially communicated on social media before the note verbal followed afterwards. Ramaphosa has indicated that he does not plan on finding and sending a replacement anytime soon.
We are continuing to engage with them. And as it is now, a great deal of progress had been made by our ambassador in straightening out the path to ensure that there is meaningful engagement at the diplomatic level. So this is a hiccup that we are working on straightening out. So we are not being blue-ticked. We cannot be blue-ticked because we are such an important player to the United States of America, as they are an important player to South Africa.
Despite our first citizens' insistence that progress has been made in restoring relations with the US, his counterpart Donald Trump doesn't seem, at least publicly, to be singing from the same hymn sheet. Just this week, Trump said South Africa is now on a watch list. He was answering questions from reporters about Hunter Biden's visit to South Africa and who would be footing the bill for the former president's son's security service detail.
I would say if there are 18 with Hunter Biden, that will be something I'll look at this afternoon, okay? Sure. I just heard about it for the first time. So you have 18 Secret Service going, where is he exactly?
In South Africa.
In South Africa. And South Africa, you know, is on a watch list, you know that. Because what they're doing to people is brutal. And I've stopped having money go to South Africa, you know that. Billions of dollars. So he's in South Africa. That's very interesting. All right, I'm going to take a look at that. Thank you very much.
At the same time, South African-born writer and Trump insider Joel Pollack says he has an idea of what would ameliorate relations between Pretoria and the White House. Pollack, who has used his platform to write disparaging articles about the country, which are also highly regarded by the Trump administration, says the renaming of Santon Drive to Leila Khalid Drive would heighten tensions. The presidency has confirmed that it has since reached out to the city of Johannesburg regarding this matter.
There are so many things that South Africa and the United States can do together, but there have to be compromises, and South Africa has to come to the table. It's fairly clear what they are. South Africa has to amend or limit the Expropriation Act, which is what the president reacted to first. It has to change the application of its Black economic empowerment laws, because right now they discourage American investment and foreign investment really of any kind, because investors show up and immediately have to hand over a huge chunk of their equity to someone they've never met before. So that's a problem.
Rasool was given until Friday to leave the US after being declared a persona non grata by the Donald Trump administration. But Monday was his last day at the embassy, where he officially ceased to have diplomatic immunities and privileges afforded to him. Newzroom Afrika's Washington correspondent was at the South African embassy in Washington on the day Rasool wound up his activities as an ambassador.
At the moment, it looks like just a perfectly normal day at the South African embassy. There's a diplomatic car just parked inside the compound. We don't know if Ambassador Rasool is inside the building, but this is a sad day for him and for the bilateral relationship between the United States and South Africa, because this is the day on which he will formally, from the American perspective, become a former ambassador. His diplomatic privileges, his diplomatic immunity are all being cancelled today. As of tonight, he will be a private citizen, and he'll be a private citizen with only permission to remain in the United States until Friday. Our understanding now is, and there's been some confusion about this throughout the day, that he is planning to depart on Friday night from Washington's Dulles Airport, make his way back to Johannesburg, spend Saturday night in Johannesburg, and then head to Cape Town on Sunday. As we know, we heard from President Ramaphosa earlier in the day, he wants a face-to-face meeting with the man who by then will be former Ambassador Ebrahim Rasool to discuss precisely how this crisis erupted and what government might be able to do about determining who should be moving into the embassy here and to the ambassador's residence in the heart of Washington, D.C. There is precedent for ambassadors to be expelled from the United States under President Donald Trump in the past. You go back to the summer of 2019, and the British ambassador to the United States, Kim Darroch, who ironically was working in the British embassy, which is directly on the other side of the street from the South African embassy. He was ordered to depart after a confidential cable was leaked by a right-wing activist in the UK. It revealed that the British ambassador at the time had described the Trump administration as being inept. That didn't go down well with Donald Trump, so that ambassador was asked to leave the country. Yeah. But there's no question this is a day that marks a low point in the bilateral relationship between the United States and South Africa.
There are now officially 2 vacancies, both in South Africa and the United States, for ambassadorship posts. Polak, who is tipped to come to Pretoria to replace Ruben Brigitte, says while he acknowledges that the Union Buildings has the prerogative to reject him becoming head of mission, he believes he's the more suitable candidate than others.
If South Africa decides that they don't want me, that's fine. I would just offer one word of warning. Anyone else the president is likely to select is going to be nastier than me. I think that I have a knowledge of South Africa, a background from South Africa, and a love of South Africa that I don't know is widely shared among other possible candidates. We have had some very good ambassadors in the past and people with connections to the country, so there may be some who fit that description, but I don't think Ebrahim Rasool was the problem in the relationship between the two countries. And in fact, when I was asked before, should the United States reject his credentials, I said no. South Africa is going to send whom it chooses to send, and the United States is not in the business of deciding that we don't like this ambassador or that ambassador because of their political views. Rasool's views reflect those of the South African government. And so if we have problems with his views, it's not just because we have a problem with him personally, it's because his views are those of his government, and that's the issue that needs to change. The policies need to change.
The decades-long violence in the DRC continues to concern not only continental leaders, but countries across the globe. This week, former DRC President Joseph Kabila arrived in South Africa on invitation from ex-President Thabo Mbeki to discuss reviving the 2002 Sun City Agreement, which was a roadmap to bringing peace in the sub-Saharan country, which remains bedeviled by the colonial hangover. At the same time, the Emir of Qatar succeeded in getting Rwandan President Paul Kagame and Congolese leader Felix Tshisekedi to find consensus on how to end the volatile, escalating conflict in the Great Lakes region. An extraordinary trilateral meeting was held in Doha on Wednesday, where both parties called for an immediate ceasefire. On Tuesday, Joseph Kabila arrived at the Thabo Mbeki Foundation's offices to meet with its patron. The agenda was not fully disclosed, but it's understood that part of the discussion would be about reviving an intra-Congolese discussion that seeks to stabilize the political climate in the DRC, as was done in 2002 in Sun City.
No, we talk about the weather and things like that, that's fine.
As the meeting in Houghton continued, rebel group M23 also snubbed a gathering that was to be the first direct talks with the Congolese government in Luanda, Angola. The resistance came after the European Union imposed sanctions against several Rwandan officials for their alleged support of the armed militia. A day before that, on Monday, Rwanda also severed diplomatic ties with Belgium. Kabila says it's time that Congolese citizens lead the process and path to finding peace.
I believe the problem in the Congo, you rightly said so, the problem is President Felix, the solution is President Felix. Now, how do you understand that? How do you turn that left and right? Up to you. But critical decisions have to be made. And in critical times, you have to make critical decisions. And these are critical times for the Congo. But in as far as we are concerned, well, like I said, we intend to be very much involved in everything that's happening, especially in as far as peace is concerned, and to move around instead of it just being a SADC thing or East African, for it to be our own initiatives, and go each and everywhere where we believe that we can bring about positive change, positive news, be it in the East, which we are preparing to do, be it in the South, in the North, and the West.
At the same time, the meeting in Doha saw both presidents Paul Kagame and Felix Tshisekedi sitting around the table for the first time ever since the resurgence of violence in the Great Lakes region. The pair were unanimous in calling for an immediate ceasefire.
Congo has needed these two presidents to sit and to talk. On 3 occasions in the past, Kagame has gone to peace negotiations and Tshisekedi hasn't turned up. So what Qatar has managed to achieve in actually getting these two presidents in the same room to begin this process is a real breakthrough.
On the decision by Rwanda to sever its diplomatic ties with Belgium, one international relations expert says this move was not surprising given the colonial history that the two countries share and the impact that this has had on the present-day conflict in the eastern DRC. But there are still questions about Paul Kagame's leadership style and contribution towards the violence, which has also prompted the EU to impose sanctions against some officials in Kigali.
Rwanda and Belgium have had a fairly amicable relationship, as Rwanda has had with most of the European Union as well, because it sold itself as the success story post-genocide, as the economic success story, as the social success story. And in many ways, Rwanda has made considerable strides. However, it has become very much an autocracy. You have now President Kagame there, who's installed himself pretty much as president for life. There is, even since the early days, since when, I used to be a regular visitor to Kigali in the early to mid 2000s, and, up until about 2010. And increasingly, the freedom of voice, the freedom of expression was very much under threat then.
Coming up after the break, we unpack the formal notification issued by the Cape Independence Advocacy Group to the South African government that it intends to head to the United States to lobby for an independent Western Cape. Just how much more strain can our country take between Pretoria and the White House? Plus, we examine the strength of the NPA's case against former President Jacob Zuma's daughter, Duduzile, for her tweets before and during the 2021 civil unrest. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back. Thanks for staying with Newzroom Afrika as we continue to look back at the week in politics. Now, the Cape Independence Advocacy Group believes the White House will give them a very positive reception when they head to the United States sometime in April. Their objective is to fundraise and get diplomatic support for their campaign to have a referendum on the Western Cape becoming independent from the rest of South Africa. The group has given the President, the International Relations Minister, and Premier Alan Winde 7 days to raise any possible objections.
This is simply about the Western Cape people having a right to self-determination. And of course, we must bear in mind that South Africa and the ANC in particular are great outspoken proponents of the right for self-determination. I mean, how many times have you heard South Africa, the South African government and the ANC calling for a two-state solution in the Middle East based upon the Palestinians' right to self-determination? And effectively, this is just quid pro quo. Here we are, the Western Cape people also have a right to self-determination, and all we want to see is the South African government and the ANC being just as keen to promote our right to self-determination as they are for the Palestinians and Western Saharans and other groups.
But the presidency believes this behavior is unconstitutional.
Given the organization's limited representation and lack of alignment with our constitutional values that prioritize social cohesion and equality, it is crucial for the leadership of government to focus on addressing the pressing needs of all citizens through dialogue and policies that strengthen social solidarity. Therefore, the President takes a very strong dim view on this planned visit to the US to seek secession from South Africa. Our constitutional democracy that we forged in 1994 created a singular non-racial society state that recognizes and protects our unity in diversity. From Musina to Cape Town, we are one democratic society.
The National Prosecuting Authority says its terrorism case against MK Party MP Duduzile Zuma Sambudla is watertight, and this will be proven once the matter goes to trial. The case was back in court on Thursday and was postponed to the 14th of August for a pre-trial hearing. It says it consulted forensic evidence experts, interpreters of emojis and social media content before pressing charges against Zuma Sambudla.
Upon examination of the tweets that were posted in her X account, prosecutors consulted forensic evidence experts, consulted interpreters of emojis, interpreters of social media content. Because remember, I had indicated that these expertise reside outside of the South African Police Service, so they had to be outsourced. So the belief is that the charges will be sustained when the trial does proceed.
Do you still wish this affidavit to be handed in as evidence? You're okay with that?
At the beginning of March, Zuma Sambudla's lawyers wrote to the KwaZulu-Natal Director of Public Prosecutions seeking to terminate the continuation of the matter, but their submission was rejected. Dalimpofu has now indicated his client's intention to escalate her bid to have the terrorism case against her dropped with the National Director of Public Prosecutions, Shamila Batowi.
They have not yet submitted the representation in order to escalate them from the DPP to the National Director in terms of Section 2216 of the NPA Act. Once they do so, it will then be a matter that the NTPP would have to consider depending on what they present before her. She will also have to get a report from the Director of Public Prosecutions, because in terms of the NPA Act, an NDPP may only review a decision to prosecute or not to prosecute after consulting the relevant DPP.
The Umkhonto weSizwe Party says this terrorism case is an extension of the politically motivated witch hunt against former President Jacob Zuma, which is now seeing his daughter being a victim of a sustained manufactured campaign over the years.
It's political persecution because the issue here, all she ever did on Twitter was to say we see you, and all of this happened after the event. Now the question is, how do you get charged for inciting when something has already happened? You know, how is that? And also, if you are to look at the target market, if you look at the people that were actually involved in the looting and all of that, these are not the kinds of people that are following her on Twitter or even have a Twitter account or even have data, just poor people.
If there are no interlocutory applications and if Batowi upholds the KZN DPP's decision, the trial may begin in earnest on the 10th of November until the 21st of December this year. That's it from me for now. Stay tuned to Newzroom Afrika. This weekend, we'll take you to Cape Town for that ANC rally to welcome back Ebrahim Rasool back into the country. Plus, the IFP is commemorating its 50th anniversary with a series of activities in Ulundi and Melmoth. There's always plenty more news, views and breaking news here on Channel 405. For now, it's goodbye. Thank you for watching.